Hi, in this section of video, I'm going to talk about offers and compromise. One of the things that we find in our office most frequently with people who owe a significant amount of money to the IRS is that they ask us whether or not they can just pay the tax and maybe get the IRS to waive the penalties and interest. And what we found is that there's two basic ways that we can get that done. The first is we can get penalties abated if they have a reasonable, what the IRS calls reasonable cause, why they didn't either file the returns or pay the taxes. The second way is through an offer and compromise. And an offer and compromise is a settlement agreement entered into by the taxpayer with the IRS to settle their taxes for what they can afford to pay rather than what they owe. And it doesn't matter how much you owe to do an offer and compromise. What matters is how much you can afford to pay. It's not based on a percentage. It's based on what your income is and what your expenses are, what your assets are. The IRS basically wants two things to settle your tax liability through an offer and compromise. First, they want as much as the value of your assets. And what they do is they look at, for example, a house. And if a house has equity in it, then they want an amount equal to the equity. They look at your assets, and you're allowed to exempt certain things, household goods, tools of your trade, and things of that nature are not counted when they figure out how much your assets are worth. Secondly, they want as much as they believe they can get out of your income for the next 4 to 5 years, depending on how the offer is structured. And what they do is they look at how much your income is expected to be. They have certain amounts that are allowed for living expenses, some geographic. For example, housing allowances are based on where you live. For example, if you live in New York City, they're going to allow you a lot more than if you live in a rural area that has a lower cost of living. So what happens is we file an offer and compromise with the IRS, and then after a period of waiting, they will negotiate with us. It takes an awful lot of paperwork, though, to do an offer and compromise. The IRS will take an absolutely close look and scrutinize your income, your expenses, and all the financial affairs that you've been involved in. To do an offer and compromise, you have to become totally transparent with the IRS. Another problem with an offer and compromise is you're making an agreement that for 5 years from the date an offer and compromise is accepted, you'll pay every tax that you owe on time and you'll file every tax return on time. But if you qualify and if you can go through the difficulties of getting an offer and compromise accepted, it is certainly the best way to resolve tax problems without paying the full amount that you owe, but rather paying an amount